word. Switch the bracelet on the word, the word, the word, the word. Switch the bracelet on the word, the word, the word, the word. Switch the bracelet on the word, the word.
Welcome to the Word on Blake 7, and it is a big welcome to Nick, to Lynn, to Dave, and to Neil. Happy New Year to you all, and Happy New Year to everybody who follows our wonderful podcast. Thanks to everybody who has subscribed over the last few weeks, and please give it a share, give it a like, and pass on the word to any Blake 7 fan that we are doing this podcast. But we already are up to Series A, Episode 8, and if you haven't watched the show before, this is a spoiler alert. We always read out from the Bible to give you an indication of what this show is about. The Liberator has used up a lot of its energy supplies in trying to evade the pursuit ships. They turn the page. Approach a completely uncharted planet and take a very low orbit in order to spend 48 hours recharging the energy banks. Whilst this is happening, Blake, Jenna, and Gan teleport down to the surface where they find millions upon millions of graves and the signs of a series of battles having taken place many years before. They also spot two aliens who appear and then disappear. Meanwhile, Travis, with two pursuit ships, approaches the Liberator. Blake and the others rapidly teleport back to the ship and attempt to engage in battle. However, with their energy reserves so low, they find it exceptionally difficult. They ride out a number of plasma bolt attacks until Blake hits on the idea of ramming Travis's ship. As the two ships are about to connect, all motion is stopped, and Cinefar and G-Rock, the two aliens, take control from the surface, bringing Blake and Travis down to the planet. It appears that they are the last survivors of an ancient race which destroyed itself in wars thousands of years before. Between them, they control the power and all that remains of that race. They announce that Blake and Travis must fight a duel in order to learn the lessons of their race. Each man is given a knife and told that he must hunt the other. A friend of each is also teleported down to the surface. In Blake's case, Jenna, and in Travis's, the mutoid pilot of the ship. They are transported to a forest and the hunt begins as night falls. Travis and his mutoid set a trap for Blake, whilst Blake and Jenna remain in a tree, avoiding the probably violent animals which will still range over the planet's surface. The mutoid captures Jenna and in her desperate need is about to take Jenna's blood when Travis intervenes and tells her to leave Jenna as a trap. Blake finds Jenna and starts to release her as Travis springs his trap. Blake wins the ensuing fight and Jenna overpowers the mutoid, who is weak with lack of blood. Despite having won the battle, Blake refuses to kill Travis in order to teach Cinefar and G-Rock a lesson about mercy. They allow Blake to return to the Liberator and recharge the energy banks for the crew, thus allowing them to escape before Travis and the now disgraced mutoid can return to their ship. So that's it. That is Duel. And as always, we will get everyone's views first on the storyline, the plot, and what you thought of this episode. Starting with you, Nick.
Oh, straight into me. On the whole, I liked it. It crosses, for me, it crosses a couple of different genres, one of which I'm not so keen on. So I like sci-fi. I like Doctor Who, Blake 7, Star Wars, Star Trek, that type of stuff. I'm less keen on fantasy type films or genres, and this had both for me. And the majority of it with the actual duel itself, I think is really good. I enjoy it. The bits with G-Rock and Cinefars, these sort of otherworldly godlike creatures, I'm less keen on. And for me, I would have preferred it if they'd got to the duel element through some other route, because I didn't quite enjoy that. That being said, I thought Isla Blair as Cinefar was really good. I thought she put in a fantastic performance, but it was just the plot line of that bit I was less keen on. But I thought the actual the element of the duel was cool. It, to me, sort of had echoes of the Doctor Who story, The Deadly Assassin, where the Fourth Doctor's fighting, who was it, Chancellor Barusa or somebody, Chancellor Goff. in this other world, and it sort of echoed that a little bit. I thought, not in any sort of plagiarism type of way, but it had a little a feel of it. There was a couple of little plot holes. I thought, well, plot hole. I thought it was only a minor thing, but it was towards the end when they'd all sort of gone back to the ship, and Gan came up to Blake and said, what did she look like? What was Cinefar like? We could only see it from her eyes. And Gan said, oh, of course you didn't. Blake said, of course you never saw her, did you? And yet Gan had seen her right at the very beginning when they beamed down to the planet. I thought, well, he did see her. He was the first one to see her, which I thought was a bit odd. And I thought the director could have seen that. And just again, usual gripe of action sequences looking a bit staged. The mutoid creeping up on Jenna ever so slowly so she could kick her was painfully slow. And that could have been redone, I thought. But on the whole, an enjoyable episode, I thought. With a couple of tweaks for my personal taste, but that's down to me.
All right, no problem. Lynn, your views on this episode, your feelings about the episode in general.
Yeah, overall, I agree with Nick. I thought it was a strong story. Overall, I don't mind the fantasy elements as much, so that didn't stick out. I thought actually on watching it again, and I watched it with and without the new special effects this time. I know it's not a perfect one for that, but seeing it twice, it seems quite extended a little bit at the beginning. The fantasy element, although it sets the scene, I suppose, atmospherically, but it probably could have been a little bit shorter. I like this central duel piece, and in fact, you are putting Blake and Travis. It's not quite a sort of a cartoon characterization of them, but they're definitely at their polar edges, aren't they? Travis is totally Travis in this episode, and the way he goes about everything, the lines he's got. Blake is doing Blake, although I did notice, I thought that he was less earnest than normal, or he has been so far, Blake. There were more little kind of chatty exchanges and relaxed things, particularly with him and Jenna on the planet. And I thought that was a bit of a development of his character. I liked the rest of the crew on the Liberator doing a kind of Big Brother watch on the screen. That's what it felt like. But again, you have more chance for crew interaction. Thought Avon was quite snippy this week, even for Avon, actually, in some of the retorts he came back with. But it gave an opportunity for some good lines, which we'll come back to later, I think. I found it interesting that Callie, we're still getting aspects of Callie's kind of freedom fighter piece when she's talking about how you would search an area, and this sort of war is best kept on the run. So you're still getting little bits of that for now, which is good. What else did I say? Oh, I also noted, just in terms of the script and the way things are developing, when Blake was deciding to ram Travis's pursuit ship, he called Avon and Callie to come and have a little discussion about it. None of the others. It wasn't a big crew discussion. It was just the two of them. We'll work out what to do, and then we'll tell everyone else, which I hadn't really noticed before. So overall, I like it. I like the dual storyline. I like interactions with the crew. There was plenty of Travis and Mutoids doing what they do. So that was all good.
All right, good stuff. So it's got to a good start. Now, Dave, who's describing himself as other tonight for some reason, is going to give us his views. Now, Dave is not a Blake 7 fan. This is always the interesting part. Nick, Lynn, Neil, and myself, all big fans, but Dave is not a fan. So we've asked him to watch Blake 7 with us to try and get an idea as to whether we can either persuade him or whether he starts to fall in love with the series and become a devoted Blake 7 fan. So where are you with this episode? And Dave, what did you feel?
Well, I was watching Danger Man instead, so...
We were talking about that today, Danger Man, yes.
Yeah, I was watching Danger Man. Proper program.
Very good. Okay.
Effects, 1960, black and white, great stuff. Yes, this episode I thought was very good. I enjoyed it. I'm sure I've seen the story many times before. Anti-war story, two people pitting out the wits against each other in the New Forest. Or was it the Blue Peter Garden? I'm not quite sure. In fact, I'm sure there was an episode of Star Trek which was extremely similar. Is that right,
Yes.
Nick? You'll know.
I believe there is one. Yeah. Almost line for line, I think.
We'll speak to the lawyers later. So I did enjoy it, particularly the bits that you didn't like. I thought the fantasy stuff at the beginning, the first 5 minutes, I could have watched that over and over again. There was a couple of really good points in that I really enjoyed over and over again. But we'll get the costumes later, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
You're slow on the uptake there, Lynn.
I was very slow. Like, oh, okay.
Well, I think Steve's going to say that's down to the budget because they couldn't afford to heat the studio. Oh, there she is.
Oh, man.
Right.
Yeah, there we are.
Right. So yes, enjoyed it. Very good.
You did enjoy it. Okay, well that's a blast from Dave there. Really, like I didn't expect you to say that, but okay.
Now,
Neil.
Steve,
Yeah. Stop now. Neil, what's your feelings on this episode?
So we get to have some depth, or in delving into the depth of Blake and Travis's character. So I think that's good. As has already been mentioned, I mean, Nick already mentioned that it's a kind of, not a copy, but it looks like a lot of other sci-fi things. Dave's already mentioned the Star Trek episode, which was Arena, actually. And, you know, the only thing that changes, apparently, from that to this is that Arena gives a really good kind of outlooking at the end that everyone makes up and they find a way forward, whereas this doesn't. Everyone stays in contrast at the end and off they pop. So that's the difference between them two episodes, I think. And I think it's a bit of a sci-fi trope again, that you have these, you know, these two nemesises, if you like, having a scrap in close proximity. So I think that that is there. It's the only episode in which Travis appears without Serverland, which is quite interesting, I think. He doesn't appear on his own in any other episode. And Stephen Greif himself named this as his favourite episode. So that's quite interesting as well. Douglas Camfield apparently bore a grudge against Dudley Simpson. So this is one of the episodes that we don't have any Dudley Simpson musical interludes as well. So the other things that I pick up on, but in terms of the episode itself, it's interesting. It's interesting that it's put in here, and I think it's rather deliberate to set out that there's this Blake and Travis contrast and this battle between the two that we kind of touched on a couple of episodes back, and now it's back again, but it's back now with vengeance. I think that they've come up with this plot line and this story, and we get to explore that more. So that's how I see it.
Okay, I've got to be honest, I love this episode. It was one of my favourites, and I get exactly where you're all coming from with regards to, you know, copying, you know, other sci-fi. But it's funny because Dave and I were out today for a walk, and we were discussing Danger Man, because obviously he's been watching Danger Man, and basically how James Bond became Danger Man, which, you know, it's, I guess, you know, it's flattery, isn't it? You know, when you go off and, you know, go and remake something, I mean, you could call it plagiarism. But I think maybe, flattery that they've gone and taken an idea and used it. But I think this is one of Stephen Greif's, you know, best episodes, and I can see why I loved it, because he really got into the psyche of Travis here. I also found it just as menacing having mutoids as the, you know, as the assistant to Travis on this episode. The idea that a mutoid has to take blood from somebody to boost their energy levels and survive is great. And it's, it's that kind of thing when you're a kid watching this, that it still leaves that indelible mark. So when you get older, it still felt every bit as creepy and as, oh God, and how on earth can you beat a mutoid? I mean, I get where you're coming from. Those infamous fight scenes that we have, slightly better in this episode for one fight scene. The rest was again back to the problems that we've had in Blake 7 so far in Series A. But as a plot line, as a story, really, really good. Really, really good. A great concept, a great idea. The fact that you get these two down on the planet to battle out, the fact that you make it more difficult by putting two people down. I guess that's where the mutoid thing maybe drops a little, because a mutoid, we found a way of making the mutoid weak, and we found the twist in the tail. But maybe the fact we might have learned more from Travis if it had been somebody, if it had been a human rather than a mutoid, somebody who he had, if it had been Servalan, what would have been like in this episode had he been, left on the planet with her? What would have been like? But it was, overall the story flowed. It had it had that great story arc. It had the beginning, it had a middle, it had an end. It has that, a Blake versus Travis story again, which is synonymous with this, with this particular series. And we saw a bit more from Blake, a different dimension to his character, a different angle to his character. But I thought really in general it was a good episode. And the two aliens, did it feel like an alien planet? Yes, it did. Did they feel like aliens? Yes. The psychedelia stuff, which is enhanced on the Blu-ray version, is good. The Blu-ray version of this is good. I'm watching back to back. I'm watching the DVD, then I'm watching the Blu-ray. So I'm having to watch this twice.
Enhanced on the Blu-ray, Steve.
Everything's enhanced, Dave. Yes, believe you me. And it's really good. And the cutaways to the spaceships and stuff like that are so much better on the Blu-ray, which I think if anybody goes out and buys a copy of the Blu-ray and watches that as their first experience of Blake 7, they'll really, really enjoy it. The colorization of it and stuff like that is excellent. And this episode is one of them that's really benefited, I think, not because there's not a great deal to do in this one, but it's just the fact that they have got the difference in the ships and stuff like that, and the planet colorization makes it look more of an alien world. It's it's great. The Blu-ray version is excellent. But I really liked it as far as an episode's concerned. I think I was looking forward to rewatching this one. And I'm really pleased that I have done. I think the storyline was good. The script is excellent. There's some great opportunities really as well for Travis in this with his lines. Again, we've got that development of Avon and Villa again, and that comedy duo with a bit of some great sarcasm again from Avon in this one. I don't think it could have been massively improved. I think the only thing I would say is, it would have been interesting had it been, say, a Servalan who'd gone down onto the planet with Travis as opposed to a mutoid. Would that have made it slightly different? But yeah, and interesting that they chose in the script to select Jenna to go down on the planet with Blake, because I mean it was pushing that kind of that narrative, that those two maybe potentially had something going on. Were they particularly close? How did
well, it's like they were seen as commander and second in command, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right about Servalan there. We had a nondescript mutoid turn up as Travis's second, which Kira, as we learned that Travis tells us that's her name because he delved into her records. But it would have been interesting if it was Servalan and Travis rather than Travis and Kira and a mutoid.
Well, was perhaps not the point that Travis didn't have any friends or emotional relationships? So
maybe so, because he chooses mutoids to he prefers mutoids, and later on something else which I won't go into now. But I think that's that. And Blake and Jenna have an emotional attachment, as I think that Steve is talking about there. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they could have done much more with it, in the sense that an episode of Blake 7 runs at about 50 odd minutes. I don't think they could have done much more, and setting the trap and the the way that they spent the night up the tree. That I agree with Lynn as well. I love that kind of Big Brother is watching you. Where the crew were helpless but got a chance to watch. I thought that was quite good as well. And overall, a really good episode for me. So we will move on and talk about the thoughts on the director and the direction. This is Douglas Camfield who did this one, who is, if I remember rightly, I think is a new name on the series. And I'm not sure, did Douglas Camfield do any more, Nick? Can you get off the top of your head? Did he only did? Yeah, so he's only done one. So there we go. So Douglas Campfield's only episode. It's not a bad one. Nick, is there anything he could have changed? Anything you think? I mean, we've all touched on the fight scenes again.
Well, that's the main thing that. Well, I mean, it's a general bugbear throughout, really. So it's not a Douglas Camfield specific thing. It seems to be all of them that they can't see that when something looks utterly unrealistic. As I said earlier, the mutoid creeping up on Jenna when she was sat on the ground, ever so slowly getting her needle out to take her blood, and then Jenna just kicks her away. Jenna kicks her away. That was just too staged, and why they can't see that stage. Also, that the fight scene between Travis and Blake. What was it? Travis hits Blake with an uppercut, which again looks very stiff and like something out of a 1920s boxing manual.
Oh,
he is wearing tight leather, Nick.
You what? Sorry.
He is wearing a tight leather outfit.
Well, that is very true. Restricted movements. And then Blake comes running back at him and is almost doing the forward roll before he's been hit by the stick. Well, I say it's Blake; it's probably a stunt man, but again, it just looks a bit staged. So they could have perhaps redone that. And I think just from a time management point of view, there was a couple of scenes with Travis and the mutoid that was clearly shot in studio with the CSO background showing the forest, when they could have just done it there and then when they were there. I'd have assumed, but
those are the things. Okay, direction, Lynn. Anything that you think Mr. Camfield could have improved, or anything he could have changed?
I think not too much. We've done the fight scenes, and I think Nick's got a better eye for those sorts of things anyway. I think I liked the Kira conversation. I kind of liked how he had Travis looking positively disappointed at the end that he couldn't get a rise out of her, couldn't get a reaction to who she had been. He was just trying to keep himself occupied while he's sitting up a tree at night. At night filming was nice, that it truly was. I think the stuff on location appeared to be filmed at night, which I liked. No, there wasn't much that struck for me. I quite liked, despite the reason, whether that was justified or not, I liked the difference in the soundtrack. I think it added to the that feeling of it being a different planet, the kind of slight fantasy, creepy, not sure what's going on. So the fact you didn't have Dudley and his usual kinds of soundtrack made you view it in a different way. Exactly. Plus trombone, I think. So I liked, that gave it a different feel, which worked for me. So yeah, not too much that I would have changed, actually. I like the way he directs a Blake 7 episode.
Did you do any more research, Dave, on Mr. Campbell? What else did he direct?
Well, he directed a few TV shows as well. Because I was quite impressed with this, and I thought he was a bit of a genius, really, because he must have looked at the previous 7 episodes of Blake 7 and said, right, what's enough? Fight scenes enough. So at least in this episode, he got around that by one of the fight scenes being in slow motion. So, that got round to in fact, it probably wasn't in slow motion, but it looked as if it was in slow motion. So that fight scene, he got away with that by using slow motion. We didn't have any doors in this. He got rid of the doors, which was good as well. And he got rid of that crappy end of the pier music, which I don't like. The theme tune I like, just to clarify that, but the incidental music I think is really poor. I don't like it at all. So he got rid of all of those things. Then he had the good common sense not to direct any more episodes of Blake 7. So I think the guy was a genius, Sadly, when I did check him out, sadly he died quite young. He was only 52 when he died.
Yeah.
So he didn't do a great deal more. But I thought he did a good. He gave a good account of himself in this, I thought.
All right, good stuff. Neil,
Yeah.
anything that you would have changed with the direction?
Not really. I think the stuff that all I will say is that I think that the episode is titled Duel. We have a duel. We have a lot going on the Liberator beforehand, and a lot going on after. So I'm not sure that there was quite enough about that duel scenario, to be honest.
Well, you wanted to see more stage fighting, did you?
Perhaps a little bit more in some way. If we could have gone a little bit more in depth into Blake and Travis's feelings about each other and things like that, might have been interesting. So that really, and I think it's interesting too when you watch this, and I don't want to go on too far into Series C, where we have another episode called Death Watch, but there are some similarities where there are a crew sat on the flight deck watching something play out in front of them. So I think that's quite interesting as well, to be fair. But I think that's a rather sci-fi trope, to be honest. And I think this whole thing, as we've mentioned, there's a Doctor Who episode, as Nick mentioned, there's a Star Trek episode. I think this whole thing has a little bit of sci-fi tropey stuff going on. But in terms of direction, you can't, there's nothing wrong with it, really. I think he does a good job.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he did a great job with this episode. I agree on the duel thing. I would have liked to have seen it expanded slightly, even down to selection of weapons or something like that, because other things that you watch with regards to like duels, you would go through that. Why we established why they were fighting. We established why they wanted them to fight, but we didn't really, they just got given a rather pathetic looking sword. We have the bit where, obviously they're allowed to fight, and then they put back to the beginning because that's not allowed. You've broken the rules, and it becomes a little bit. Well, that in itself is a little bit confusing. But yeah, I would like to have seen. I'd like to have seen establishing a duel a bit more, and I would have liked to have seen a bigger fight. I think a bigger fight would have been a bit more exciting for the viewers. But because fights are so poor in Series A of Blake 7, he's probably done the right thing and avoided it like the plague. Definitely a stunt fighter for Stephen Grief. When you watch Stephen Grief fall back over, it's not Stephen Grief, it's a stunt actor with a black wig on, which is a pretty horrendous black wig. I did have to rewind it and watch it back just to make sure that I wasn't seeing things, but it was a bad black wig. But yeah, it's not the first time we've had a stunt double for Travis either. More of that later. But yeah, we've got a really good episode here. It is a good episode. It's all about the storyline. It's about how he's directed it. I did like the trap. I couldn't remember what the trap was. For some reason, I thought it was that traditional dig a hole and put a load of leaves on the ground, and then I forgot it was actually a more intricate piece of kit that Travis and the Mutoid had managed to knock together a bit like the A-Team with limited resources and tools. They managed to make this huge cage to not only house Blake in, but somebody else, Jenna. I was thinking, how on earth he managed to do that in such a short space of time? But anyway,
they didn't manage to kill anyone with it as well.
And didn't manage to kill anybody with it, yeah. But yeah, listen.
It landed like a feather, didn't it? I'm surprised you were impressed with that, Steve, because it landed like a feather and it was just flat.
Well, it was how long it took the Mutoid to cut the rope as well. I mean, I know we've got dramatic license and we're trying to build the tension up here, but yeah, look, we can watch any program or film and you can pick it apart. But I think generally speaking, Douglas Campbell did a really good job. I'm glad you did the research on him, Dave, and that is sad to hear that he passed away. But he did a good job. I would like to have seen him do a few more Blake 7, but sadly it wasn't meant to be. So anyway, just want to say thank you to everybody watching. We've got 178 live viewers, so thank you for watching. If you have got the time, please jump over onto our Blake 7, the Word on Blake 7 YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. We do intend to get through to Series D. It'll be a slow burn. Now, we are going to do another episode next week, but then we're going to have one a month to carry on through the process of finishing Series A. And just keep coming back. Spread the word if you are into a bit of sci-fi and podcasts. This is something slightly different, and feel free to jump into the chat and give us your views on this particular episode as well. Okay, on to the thoughts on the best and worst special effects and costumes in this episode. And boy, did we have some costumes to pick, Nick. Anything that sprung out for you, or any special effects in this one?
Well, funnily enough,
Sprung out, is that the right words?
in a break from the usual I'm going to give both the best and worst costume to Isla Blair as Cinefar. So she was the best costume from a male perspective, and that's enough said.
and probably a female perspective. I think there's probably people all over the world enjoyed that costume.
And
apart from her looking back,
the worst costume from a is this appropriate for the time of day it's being broadcast point of view.
Yes.
So she gets best and worst costume. Does old Isla there? What was the other bit? Special effects.
Special effects.
I didn't. In terms of best special effect, there was nothing particularly out at me really. As special effects.
even from a little bit of a backtrack there.
Again, Steve.
Worst special effect, I would say, was probably the rubber bat eating Blake's hand.
Yeah.
I thought it was tin foil.
Or tin foil eating Blake's hand. It was one or the other, yeah. Tin foil.
I did try to find a picture of it. Sadly, I couldn't find a picture of it. I did find a picture of this.
Is this ever leaving us, or is it staying? It's like some kind of haunting or something.
I'm going to keep that. It's going
Fantastic.
Is that it, Nick, from your perspective? Yeah. Great stuff. All right. Coming to you, Lyndon. Anything that stood out for you that Nick hasn't mentioned?
So special effects. Rubber bats, definitely not. I liked, I suppose, the two ships. So the Liberator coming to ram the pursuit ship again, and having watched, I watched the original, and actually thought that I assume they were using the large Liberator model because it looks great even in the original, and what they did with the special effects on the Blu-ray, I thought gave it even more kind of atmosphere. So I quite like that, even though I guess it's not actually that difficult to do. Otherwise, there wasn't very much, I suppose, in terms of special effects. And as Dave said, no doors. So we're going to have to talk about those. Costumes. I wondered what on earth they'd done to put Villa's costume together. He's wearing about 5 different things, or parts of about 5 different things, as far as I can see. I don't know if it's kind of heralding the sort of jester approach that they bring to Villa later in the series, but it's very busy. There's a lot going on there. I wasn't too sure about that. I think the Mutoids costumes, they don't get better than Series A. They get decidedly worse, in fact, as we go through the rest. I'll let Dave wait for the enjoyment of that. But I think it really works, along with Travis and all the black leather. It fits, and for me, I like them, and they're not around long enough. So I'll make a note of them now, I think.
Okay. Dave.
Special effects. Well, the bat, which, I haven't seen the Blu-ray, but to me, it looked like a tin foil bat on one scene and then a rubber bat. But we'll agree it wasn't a real bat or anything approaching a real bat. It's not a special effect, but I was quite concerned at Travis's teeth. There's a scene where Travis is he's got his mouth wide open, and his back teeth.
Fillings, yeah.
They look like tire chains or something.
There were space fillings, though, Dave.
I've never seen it. They're grotesque. So if that's a special effect, it was very well done. If that's his real teeth, gold album. What else have I got for special effects? Oh yes, what they call the the alien,
The mutoid.
mutoids. Thank you. The Simpsons hairstyle that they had. What was that about? I don't know whether that's a special effect or it's a costume. Yeah, I mean, it looks like Homer's missus. If it was just
Oh yes, Marge Simpson.
Marge Simpson's the same hair. If it was just yellow, and on close-ups, you could see her real hair underneath it. You know, just like with Travis's eye patch, you could see his eye blinking underneath the hole. So we know he's got a real eye under there. But yeah, those hairdo things are just ridiculous and totally unnecessary.
They do change, so you're.
Do they? Oh well.
It's interesting that later on in a Series D episode that yeah, what you mentioned there, the hair underneath comes out.
Yeah. The night animal sound effects I found very confusing. Well, you see, some of them sounded like night animals you would expect to hear. And then I think somebody changed the BBC sound effects records and we got animals from the jungle and tweet. So it was a right mishmash, you know. Some of it sounded like Steve snoring, from what Dawn tells me, and some of it sounded like, you know, animal magic. So it was, yeah, pick a sound and stick with it, I would have said to that. And the cage thing was pathetic as well, I thought. Other than that, costumes, yeah, Jenna got a nice costume for a change. We got out of a multicoloured thing and we got into this sort of black thing with whatever. So she had a new costume because I was getting a bit concerned about her personal hygiene after 7 episodes, you know. So it was nice to see Jenna in a new costume. And I think that's the obvious one, you know, our friend at the beginning. You know, I thought her costume was, you know, maybe she could have revealed a bit more. I thought it was a bit over, you know, too much, but never mind.
Oh, God. Moving on swiftly from Dave to you, Neil. What's your feelings on the costumes?
Not a huge amount to add to all of that. I mean, obviously, Cinefar's costume warrants comment for various reasons. We'll leave that at that. I'm not sure that it was appropriate for the show and the time that it went out, to be fair. I do like, as Lynn touched on, you know, Travis and the mutoids are similar, and I think that's quite Federation-y, to be fair, and kind of sets that up. The Federation kind of, or the hat on the mutoids is meant to be something that is involved in their programming, but I'm not sure that it works or never really worked. Villa's costume's dreadful. The best costume in the program is, I'd say, is probably the mutoids and Travis, to be honest, because they tie in with each other. So I'm going to go with that.
Okay, I'm going to chuck a curveball in. I thought Jenna's costume was fantastic.
Yeah.
I did like it. It was different. I mean, out of all the ones on the Spaceship Liberator this week, that was definitely adventurous, to say the least. A very spacey type of costume. I was working out, was that planets on there? I'm not sure, but yeah, Jenna thought it was good. Villas, completely get you on Villas.
And a good move away from Jenna's costumes to date.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I thought it was good, you know.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah, I did. I mean, I get where Dave's coming from with the mutoids. You know, the mutoids costume was, you know, it's menacing. Travis is menacing, but you can't get away from that eye patch, which nobody liked, including the actor. Horrendous, you know, eye patch. Should have been a lot more subtle, and the fact that you can occasionally see his eye underneath is ridiculous.
You can, yeah.
And as for the mutoid, yeah, maybe the headgear's a bit off, but the rest of it, yeah, it was doable. I did like the little zip down the front where they unveil the place where they put the blood in. I thought that was quite a nice little touch. And again, you got to remember, this is late 70s that we're dealing with here. It's not modern day. And you know, overall, not a bad effort with regards to the costume. again, Jenna, and this is what I'm saying, we had lots of costumes in this episode. Jenna had a one for going down, down to the, the surface, obviously. So she changed going down there. And Blake, of course, with his surface costume as well, very Robin Hood for him with his gloves on, etc., and the boots that were made for walking. But yeah, overall, a bit of variety. And just for Dave, we did have, of course, the aliens. And yes, I thought Isla Blair probably stole the show. I'm not sure why.
Watch your eyes, folks. Watch your eyes.
Exactly. But you wouldn't get away with that now. And that's probably for the best.
Is it on 3D in the Blu-ray, Steve?
It's definitely not, no. And I had a feeling you were going to ask that question. So moving on swiftly, we move on now to best actor and worst actor in this. And I think there's a bit of choice here, Nick, today. I don't think we're going to get a unanimous decision today. I think there's a one or two.
For me, although I don't like the sort of the genre, I thought Isla Blair as Cinefar was really good.
I'm not putting the picture up. I'll put this up.
There we go.
I thought, she came across as what she was meant to be really well. She was commanding and really, really good. I mean, she is married to Julian Glover, so you'd expect good acting to come out of their household. But yeah, she gets the tick for best actor of the show today. In terms of worst, I think it'd have to just for that one moment, not through a whole performance, but that for one moment, Carol Royal as the mutoid creeping up on Jenna was the worst bit of acting going on. Though,
okay.
Otherwise, I thought she was very good, but that single moment was just, redo it. That was all.
You're a hard man.
It was like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynn.
I agree for Isla Blair. I think that role she played it with conviction and in the right way, and it could have been overdone. It could have been way too kind of mystic. I agree that she absolutely got it right. I've said earlier, I think, but he's had a few votes in the last few weeks as well. Anyway, that Gareth Thomas's Blake this week, developed further, partly the script, but also his delivery, and I liked seeing that. But I think, Isla Blair has to edge that this week. I was hard pressed to find anyone that I thought was really bad, if I'm honest. As you say, I mean, it's as much direction, I suppose, as anything else for the mutoid creeping up on Jenna. So I'm not gonna blame her as much for that. And I just don't think anyone had a particularly bad day, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't think anyone warrants worst, if you like, this week.
Okay, that's fair enough. Dave.
Yes, I agree with Lynn. I haven't picked the worst actor at all. I think everybody did the job very well. There's nobody stood out as being really hammy, so I haven't picked the worst actor. Best actor, depends what picture you're going to put up this time, Steve.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I'll just go for Blake then.
Oh, dear.
He was more conversational in this episode and more relaxed, but that might be the directing as well, But I did think he was more relaxed in this episode. I have picked him in the past. And our friend at the beginning, she was very good as well. But I'm sick of hearing the other guys talking about her. That's all we've had all night. So I'm not going to join in that drivel,
Isla Blair, she's winning so far. Yeah, Neil, what about you?
It's a conundrum of things, isn't it? It's script, it's direction, and it's performance, which makes the character come through, and on top of that, then who you think might be the best actor in the episode. So I think that for me, and I mean, I'm going to go against everybody else here. I thought Stephen Greif was really good in this episode. And I just think it brought Travis out a bit more because you've only just met him a couple of episodes back. And I think that you start to understand his level of villainy a bit more in this episode. So I'm going to go with Stephen Greif on this one. To be fair, and then it's closely followed by Isla Blair or Gareth Thomas. But I mean, that's the focus of the episode is mostly that. So so that's why they stand out. To be honest, the rest of the crew and the usual cast don't really have a lot to do in this episode. Avon has a couple of good lines. He still manages to, but they're the main players in this episode. So I'm going with Stephen Greif.
No worst actor for you either.
I don't think so. I think that it's pretty solid on the acting front in this one, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Very difficult. Again, you know, the Mutoids run was probably the only thing you could pick out as something which you were thinking, oh, that wasn't very good. The fight scene again, you point to that. You know, when Jenna ends up on her backside and then tied up, it's a bit like, oh dear me, how that kind of falling back. But I mean, that's direction. It's not really acting. So yeah, I couldn't pick out anybody who was the worst actor in it. I'm going to join Neil. I genuinely felt this was Stephen Greif's episode. I thought he was superb. I thought it helped because he had the majority of the script and had some great lines. And it's that way that he plays the character. It's that evilness, and you know, it's so easy to ham that part up. I'll get you next time, Blake. It's so difficult to play that part, and yet he does it and still manages to find that kind of air of menace. And it's his delivery. His delivery is really good. The way that he pronounces the words and delivers the words, and it's just got that air of authority, but with a touch of wickedness. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Stephen Greif. I think he was excellent. I think Blake's good in this as well, and again, everyone else has mentioned it, but Avon is hardly in this episode, yet still manages to steal a bit of the show with the lines that he's given. But Gareth Thomas again, he is the hero. The program is named after him, he's excellent in this. But Stephen Greif pips it for me as best actor in this one. Okay, we always pick out the best line of the show.
Dave,
so
can I
yes, go on, Dave. Yeah, go on.
Because I'm totally at odds with everybody on this. Travis, so far, is this the second episode we've seen him only? He's just not doing it.
All right.
Yeah.
It's hard because we've all got all the background. Well, the fun is in our heads, so it's hard to separate.
Are you talking about the actor, or are you talking about the character, Dave?
Well, 2 episodes in, watching it obviously as I am for the first time, without all the history that you guys have got, I just don't find him menacing enough. I don't find there's any tension. I mean, he's been easily beaten twice so far by Blake, who's hardly an action man himself, So I just don't get this evil, nasty persona he's supposed to have. I'm not seeing it yet.
I'd argue that's script to an extent. Script to an extent.
Yeah. And it is hard, isn't it, when you've got someone like Travis? Yeah. He's got to lose each week, hasn't he? Effectively. Oh, yes. Yeah, but, so therefore it's a bit of a tough setup. But it's interesting that as you said, it isn't doing it for you at the moment.
Yeah. I can see why, Dave, to be honest. Be a bit more of a threat, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe if they'd given this guy the opportunity, the robot, to be the main villain in Blake 7, it probably would have worked out better, Dave. But it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. So, best line, Nick. Best line in this.
Well, I'm going to pick one that is probably an easy one to pick, but it's Avon's. Blake is sitting up a tree. Travis is sitting up another tree. Unless the planet throw nuts at each other, I don't see anything happening until it gets light.
Well, that's gone as well.
I bet you've all picked that. Have you, Lynn? Have you picked that?
Well, I've actually knowing that Nick almost always will. If he goes first, he'll pick one of the one I've got. I have several. In which case, the one I enjoy probably isn't as good was Giroc with Travis going not just primitive but pompous too. Pompous as much I quite liked. Yeah. But I'm picking up on Villa again because just for the I don't mind rough, it's fatal. I'm not too keen on. Is the other best line for me, other than the nuts.
Okay. Yeah. And Dave, did you have another one?
No, I mean that one made me laugh out loud when I first heard it. Unless they're going to stop throwing nuts at each other, I just thought it was hilarious. I really did, and I wrote that down. I did laugh when Gan said, "I'll go down to the planet. I'll just go and get kitted out," and he looked exactly the same. I mean, he was wearing different gear, but he always looks like Little John from Robin Hood, or Friar Tuck. But no, the line about throwing nuts at each other, that was the one for me. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Neil?
I think there was a line from Avon which kind of sums up to his future and how he is, and it's, "I've never understood why it should be necessary to become irrational in order to prove that you care, or indeed why it should be necessary to prove it at all." So I think that kind of proves it is a kind of look into Avon's future. But I think that it's a good line. I like that line. That's my favorite line. But probably the next one is a good laugh. So it's just that's a good line in this one as well.
All right, mine's right at the start of the episode, so I'm glad, because normally me going last, I've got to write about 10 down to make sure that I get a chance to get one in. But it was just that little bit of dialogue between Blake, Avon, Villa, and Gan, where basically Zen says, well, actually, hold on, I did manage to do this. Zen says this.
Confirmed.
Yay! And then Blake laughs and he says, "I get the distinct feeling I offended Zen's professional pride then." Avon goes, "It's just a machine, Blake." Villa said, "And he should know." And Gan says, "Well, Avon is the expert." And Villa says, "That's not what I meant." And Avon finishes with this corker of a line. He goes, "No, he was calling me a machine. But since he undoubtedly defines himself as a human being, I shall choose to accept that as more of a compliment than anything else." A brilliant bit of dialogue. And again, just establishing those characters, absolutely fantastic. So, a script. The one thing that Blake Seven has is really good script. They may not all end up being superb on screen. It's just the script writing was exceptional. So,
it's
another good line.
Dialogue characterization, so the dialogue fits the characterization, and
100%. 100%, mate. Yeah, that's. I think that it becomes more and more obvious as well when you start doing something like this and doing a podcast and you start analysing it rather than just sitting watching it and enjoying it. But yeah, great stuff. Okay, we finish off our episode review of Duel with a rating out of 10. So, Nick, over to you.
Okay, I had to think about this one because there was a bit of it I didn't like, which was the fantasy element. But on the whole, it's a really solid episode. So I'm going to mark it down slightly for the fantasy bit. But I'm going to give it 7.5.
7.5.
Oh, here we are with the 0.5s again, man. Make a decision, man.
Okay, Lynn.
I've given it an 8. I'm up from the 7.5. I've said, but I do really like it. I think it's really strong. I've been keeping track of everything, so I make sure I'm working from the same kind of scale.
Yeah.
And I gave Cyclocate, Destroy a 9, just because I think there's more in there to really get to grips with. I like the characterization here. I like the storyline. It is a bit of a trope. It's solid 8 for me.
Solid 8, Dave.
Can't see it.
8?
Oh, 8. It was an 8.
Tune in this week and I'll tell you what it was. It's my highest score yet.
It is.
Wow.
8.
It's an 8.25.
Brilliant stuff,
Solid
Dave. Solid 8. Very good. Neil?
I've got a lot of things that I think about with this episode, to be honest, and because I like Blake 7 for what it is in terms of character interaction and getting to know a lot of the characters, I think it struggles on that point because you only really get to delve into a couple of the characters. So for me, it kind of goes a little bit away from the normality of what Blake 7 is, but it is a strong episode and we do get to find out a lot, particularly about Travis, and I think this episode is about that, to try and find out a bit about Travis before we move on with the storyline. And it is a decent storyline, although a bit of a sci-fi trope. I'm gonna give it a 7 because of the reasons I just said. But it is a good episode of Blake 7. But because of the way that I look at it and because of what I just mentioned, that's why I've given it that.
You'll get letters.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll deal with letters.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 9. It's one of my favourite episodes in Series A. I really do like it. I just like the storyline. I think the acting's really good in it. And overall, for me, one of my high scorers in Series A. So a 9 out of 10. And thoroughly enjoyed watching that back in DVD and in Blu-ray. Well worth watching. Want to say thank you to everybody watching live. 206 of you out there have taken your time to watch us all the way through, and leave a comment, and please subscribe to the Word on Blake 7 on YouTube. We will be back next week. We're giving you a little bit of a treat because we have been off quite a bit over Christmas. So we're going to give you a treat next week, and we will be back with Project Avalon. So looking forward to that. But for now, thanks to Neil.
Enjoy the
Thanks to
special
Dave.
effects on that one,
Thanks
Dave.
to Lynn. Thanks to Lynn, and thanks to Nick. We will be back next week. Take care. Have a good week. See you. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
The word, switch the bracelet on the word, switch the bracelet on the word, switch the bracelet on the word.